World over, one country has been known to produce some of the best runners who have won and broken records on the track and field sports. A country that holds some of the best training grounds and coaches. A country that has remained undefeated in the steeplechase for the last 30 years. This is my country. This is Kenya. Welcome to Setting the Pace, a show that gives you the inside track to the world of Kenyan runners. I'm Martin Kano. Joining me in the studio is Tom Sitati, a partner of Brand Integrated Consulting.
Thank you, Martin. It's good to be here.
With me here is Derek Banga, a leading public image consultant.
It's good to see you, Martin. Thanks for having me.
Today, we ask the question, what is the future of David Rudisha's brand? It's a question that has been on everyone's mind since his world record-breaking performance at the London 2012 Olympics.
He's great.
One athlete that we are really proud of.
I think right now he's even at the same level as Usain Bolt.
And he's our Kenyan hero.
The sky is the limit for him.
I would love to see Rudisha more in the media, development-wise, but not athletic-wise.
Rudisha is a bit shy. He's even camera shy. If we could go to the field of advertising, I think we can make money.
He's done these advertisements. They're very interesting that you hear everyone talking about them. So you want to hear what he can say more in the media.
They should be given a program so that they can be interviewed. They should not be interviewed immediately. Let them rest first. Because you see somebody coming and say, he's breathing, and you're asking questions.
That was an interesting feature on Rudisha. Gentlemen, what do you think?
The story of Rudisha can be told over and over again since the 60s of very many athletes who've done as well, if sometimes maybe even better, and where the story becomes, okay, where to from here? And often, sadly, it's not too far. There are very few athletes who are able to sustain that kind of interest over a long period of time.
Yes,
and I guess partly because we don't get to see them as people.
That's true. Yes. I think an interesting tidbit amongst Kenyan athletes really is that in the history of our Kenyan athletes, only 15 athletes have ever endorsed products locally.
Wow, that's a telling number.
That's a telling number. And yes, this is what we're known for around the world. But it all depends on the media relations. How do they relate to the media? Do they relate well? Are they fearful of media visibility?
I think that's an important point. And the fact that there's only been such a small number of athletes who've actually endorsed products as compared to, say, some other industries. When we are known outside there, you travel to any country and you say you're from Kenya, the first thing people associate you is with track and field. And so that really says that I think athletes should be doing a little bit more, perhaps in terms of getting in front of the media, perhaps more in terms of being a little bit more exposed. Certainly, I think our biggest brands, David Rudisha.
Just pick here from what Derek was saying. When you go out there, when you see Kenya, you think of athletics, people winning road races, marathons, the like. Notice he'll not mention any name. We will struggle to get names. Why? Because it's a block that people can't quite dissect and build any brands. It's the country. The country does benefit as a whole, but the individuals don't necessarily benefit as much as they should. And one of the things, the statistics that came out of that particular clip was that, the industry is what, several billion, what, 200?
Yes. I think, that's true. Yes. I think we're a victim of our own success. We produce so many great athletes, but as soon as one comes in, another leaves. And so the turnover is very, very high.
It's a conveyor belt, so you can't pick out a product.
To get athletes who are consistent for a very long time. Yes. And those are the athletes that maybe those are the ones you can use to build brands. I think now, especially with Rudisha, he was obviously the face of the story of the London Olympics with his world record-breaking performance. Since then, we've heard nothing. Zero visibility. Generally, athletes have 3 to 5 months, that window of opportunity to maximize on their notoriety from an Olympics. Beyond that, you forget about them. And so what do you think that these athletes are not taking advantage of media opportunities? What are they doing wrong?
Well, if we come back to Rudisha, we're speaking about that particular case, I don't see him doing the media rounds. These are things that are done instinctively. You look at a lot of athletes out there, whether it's in the West or in America, immediately, the day after winning a race, even before the Olympics are over, you're in the studios doing going on to the Today Show or some of these famous breakfast shows. You are, as you said, capturing on that 15 minutes. This is now how potential endorsers will view you. Now they want to see, okay, how does this person sort of perform in the media? So again, this is part of your brand on show, showing the endorsers and the products out there that you potentially could endorse their products.
I suspect they see themselves as athletes. I'm doing my job. I'm running well. I've gotten the world record. I've won whatever money I've made, and it's for many of them, I imagine it's beyond their wildest dreams.
I agree.
I imagine many of them are thinking, this is enough. I mean, what else do you want me to do? Let me take a break.
The reality is it's not enough. If you look at prize money on the track, it's gone down over the years. When I was running, in the mid-90s, prize money in athletics was huge. And over the years, the European crisis, of course, has gone down. If you look at Usain Bolt or if you look at American sports, all the money they make, majority, the cash they make is in endorsements. That's where the real money is, really.
And it's not even for the shelf life of an athlete. So you get your endorsements and things, but it's even post your track career.
Absolutely. I think
what have you done within your track career for you to now have...
To stay relevant.
To stay relevant.
Absolutely.
I don't know, Martin, you work with athletes. I don't know, is it that they don't know? Is it that they're not exposed? Is it that they're not interested? Is it that they set their horizons only so much?
It's a bit of everything, honestly. It is a bit of everything. A lot of them is like, it won't fit into my training schedule, or I'd rather lead a fairly low-key lifestyle, and that's it. And then some of them, their only aim is really to get into sports, to get themselves out of, say, poverty.
Maybe it's a cultural thing.
And then it is. And so,
maybe it's a cultural thing.
But I think now, the modern athletes, especially with all these new advancements, social media is big. They're able to see, their compatriots, internationally, doing these things.
Well, if you look at someone like Rudisha, who's clearly been exposed, who's clearly getting some sort of advice from someone, this is the same person who has advised Rudisha to lay low after the Olympics. I don't understand where that comes from in terms of all the things that we're talking about. And you can't talk about that being a cultural thing. This Rudisha knows what it is like to be considered one of the best athletes on the planet, to be on the same level as a Usain Bolt. He can clearly see what is happening with the Jessica Ennises and the Usain Bolts of this world and the Mo Farahs. So why is he not at the forefront, certainly in terms of our Kenyan athletes, in taking advantage of this? That's what I want to know.
He should be.
I'll take you back to the cultural thing, because look at this country. Apart from the politicians who may sell themselves, and there's no shame about it, and maybe some CEOs, we do not have the culture of selling ourselves.
I think, especially for Rudisha, it's very, very important now, and I pick on Rudisha because he's accomplished everything that needs to be accomplished on the track. I would imagine that his strategy now is to set himself up for the rest of his life. More charity activities, much like, his predecessors, Paul Tergat, Kip Keino, all these people who have now latched on to their success, from their athletic success, to something off the track. And, they'll always be remembered.
I absolutely agree with you. He is, for lack of a better word, one of our key brand ambassadors. And so he needs to start thinking about that. Now, regardless of what he thinks about himself, I want to remain low-key, this is my personality, it is a greater responsibility than that. And what he can do is actually set the path and show the way for some of these younger guys who are coming up, to show them that this is the way to go. Now, one of the things we can definitely say about Rudisha is the way he carries himself off the track. The dignity, the quiet dignity, not getting involved, notoriety and things like that. Although, there is something to be said about being in the media. They say what?
There's nothing like bad PR.
There's nothing like bad PR.
Yeah.
But I think the point we're trying to make here is that he needs to be seen. Absolutely. Somehow there needs to be a story running about Rudisha almost every other day, hopefully in a positive light.
Sadly, funny enough, the smallest part of what you're doing as an athlete is running.
That's true.
That's just your launch pad.
That's part of it.
That's just your launch pad. And it works with many other careers. You doing your job is the smallest bit. Once you've done that, because there are other people doing that job, there'll be a next Olympic champion and the like. Then what more can you add? Who are you? That's a question they need to start asking themselves. Who are you? What are you going to contribute? Beyond you winning a medal, what are you going to contribute? And that's one thing we need to start training these guys, exposing them.
Hold that thought. We're going to go to break right now. Welcome back. Before the break, we were discussing athlete branding. you mentioned a few things about how athletes need to package themselves right.
I think if you look at athlete branding, it's become I think you said that, Derek. It's become a responsibility. If you look at Rudisha, Mutai, you've gone up there, you've represented us, you've done well. After that, if you look at the clip, people are asking, okay, you've won, thank you. Give us more, we want to know you. What they're really asking for is, where is your brand?
Martin, you've heard me talk about this. I talk about this holy trifecta or triumvirate. The three cornerstones, I think, to a great brand, certainly for an athlete. Number one is the image or the looks. Yes, we live in a visual world, but anyone from the Kornikovas of this world to athletes who have had a certain look that appeals to the media, that's number one. What are our athletes doing to enhance that? Secondly, obviously, has to be the success on the field, on the pitch, or whatever the case might be. So that goes hand in hand. And then third is the communication skills. The ability to articulate, whether that is a post-race interview. The clip we had before, somebody was talking about how they should not be interviewed when they're still out of breath after coming.
That's true.
There has to be a way that you can still be able to be articulate, even when you have just run
absolutely
24 times around the tartan track.
Yeah.
If our athletes can get those three and enhance those three, and we will start seeing great athletic brands, personal brands here in Kenya. That's my feeling.
Absolutely. And I think it's, especially the communication, and that's always been a challenge for athletes. But it's a learned skill, It's about practicing. The more you do it more, you get better at it. Yeah. And it's not about fearing interviews. I think a lot of these guys do fear interviews because maybe they're not so comfortable with a particular language, with English, when they're interviewed in English. And I saw this at the Berlin Marathon. The guy who finished second was asked, what do you think of your performance? And luckily, I think he was a bit uncomfortable. Luckily, the guy who won just, immediately took it up. And I think a lot of our athletes, speak in the language they're most comfortable in.
I think I would take it a bit deeper in terms of a lot of the time, and I know you train a lot of this in terms of public speaking and the like. One of the things about public speaking is you can guarantee when somebody has some emotion, they're driven by something, have a passion about something, the issue of stage fright does not matter. So for many of these athletes, what they haven't done yet, which I would encourage them to do, is to go deeper down to themselves and ask, as you go into this race, as you go into this particular career, what's your big goal? Do they have? If they do not have a bigger goal other than running for the couple of seconds or couple of hours that they run and then finish, you can be guaranteed you will train them day in, day out about public speaking. They're not interested. They don't have something they're trying to push. They don't have an agenda. They're not going to get much better.
I agree, but I think also the modern athlete must anticipate, the press questions. What are you going to ask after a race? They have to prepare.
They have to be
prepared. They have to be. If I'm going to be asked, well, how did your race unfold? What did you do to be successful?
And that's what I'm saying. Our athletes need to be prepared. Not just prepare themselves for the event or the race. They need to prepare themselves for the inevitable media questions that are going to come when you have finished a race. And so our athletes really need to drag themselves into the 21st century and say this is part of, this goes hand in hand with the races that I'm going to do. I am going to be in the media and I'm going to be asked a couple of questions and I need to be able to prepare. Now, I understand that. People are naturally shy. Not everybody has an aptitude towards speaking in public. However, this is part of the game.
We should be talking about the bigger, them looking for you after to talk to you. Why? Why will they look for you? Because there is a story. And unfortunately for many of our athletes, there is no story beyond the time they're on the track. Beyond that time, there's actually no story. So they're not interesting.
I
think you asked earlier, they're boring. Maybe.
Some are boring, but you see, they have to create a story. In order to be relevant, in order to be...
It has to be a story.
It has to be. And so they have to create that. And I think, in this modern age, especially with social media, there are many ways to communicate. And you can, encouraging a lot of our guys to be on Twitter and Facebook. That's how people follow them, away from the traditional media.
Again, if we're looking at attracting some of these international endorsements, what is your story? How did you grow up? Beyond the usual story. What is it that is different in your life that separates you from everybody else?
And especially,
says, this is somebody we can
and
put out.
that's what personal branding is.
For Kenyan, because there's so many Kenyan athletes out there, how does one stand out? You know, you pretty much have the same story, I think, you know, but what makes you stand out? You know, and I think if you look at, this is just an example, former Olympic champion Wilfred Bungay, you know, he differentiated himself from the rest of the athletes because he insisted on wearing sunglasses in the race, and you could point him out. You know, and that's a unique part of, you know, him that can, you know, identify him from the rest of the athletes. You're just not another Kenyan athlete. I'm not saying you just, you know, you're outrageous, understand? You know,
Martin, I would disagree that they're all the same, and I think Derek mentioned this earlier. We are all unique brands, all of us. Maybe to different, we expose ourselves at different levels. And that's what hasn't happened. And that's why they become faceless. And sadly, they're faceless even to us Kenyans. Where we've won a medal, we're happy. We remember this guy's name for a short while. And after that, somebody else will come. The gravy train keeps on going on.
And then, just picking up on your point, let's look at the American athletes. Let's look at the Usain Bolts of this world. There is a particular style. He has his signature move. He has his signature... You know what I mean? There is
he has the way he warms up, psychs himself
and things like that, that automatically is an attention getter. And that's his style that's unique to him. What do our athletes, what are they doing? What does Rudisha do before a race that makes him different? That says...
Well, I think, you know...
I'd like to see that.
What's his story?
As much as,
people are asking, what's this guy's story? Tell us. Let's see this guy. That's what they're asking for. They're asking, where is this guy's brand?
You know, I agree. But I must, again, go back to the difference between a sprinter, a middle distance runner, and a long distance runner.
But why does it have to be that?
No, because generally, sprinters are generally more outgoing. You know, they're easy. Their race is so intense.
Stereotype is that?
It is. I mean, I know. Look, middle distance runners, 800, 1500 meter athletes.
You have no personality because
they have personality, but generally,
maybe that's where we're making a mistake, because brand is not necessarily about you being bubbly, you being out there. Even that humility can lend itself, if packaged properly, can lend itself to certain.
And that was the point.
For example, endorsements.
Yes. What I'm getting at is that, you know, it is possible for these guys to, you know, have endorsements that's suited to their personalities, which is fine.
You talk about Rudisha and you say he's humble, he's got this humility. Is that what these big brands are looking for? You've got to be smart if you are going to target yourself, or you're going to be the target, actually should be reverse, for these big brands. What are they looking for? What can I do that's still authentic, but is going to be an eye catcher, so that when PUMA or whoever looks around, they say, you know what, that is the person who can endorse what this brand is about. I'd be hard-pressed right now to find a brand that is looking for somebody who's humble, mpole, humility, and things like that.
I mean, look at Gabriel Selassie. He's not too different from Rudisha in terms of his personality. He won't be flashy like Bolt and the like, but you'll see him endorsing different things. Why? Because people have found that this guy, because maybe a lot of it comes, of course, from his success, and Rudisha is also successful, they can see, if I put this guy here, he has a certain personality that can lend itself to certain brands. And you already see him doing a lot of big global endorsements. So we need to look at which brands are looking for that kind of humility.
Athletes should be encouraged, you know, and I think I've done this before. I've spoken to a lot of athletes and saying, look, you know, differentiate yourself. But a lot of them is not a priority. Their job is just to win, and that's it. You know, so it has to change. And this is where we can...
You know, I have a feeling they set their sights a little bit too low. I mean, there is a world of possibilities out there. Now, I can understand, perhaps not everybody's driving factor is amassing huge amounts of money and, you know, huge amounts of attention or product endorsement or anything like that. But I honestly feel, certainly for this brand that has been around for a long time, and I'm talking about the brand called athletics, which has put our country on the map, our athletes need to be doing a little bit more in terms of certainly how they sell themselves. You know, this brings up an interesting point. Is this something that the advisors of these athletes need to do, the athletes themselves? Is it something that the organizations that are around these athletes need to do? Do they need to put them in training, for example, in terms of communication skills? Whose responsibility is that?
I think it's the managers and sports marketers, you know, because you're the one who's helping, you know, position them. And you have to encourage them to do a certain number of things. And I think going to that, I think a good example is maybe discussing David Rudisha's brand. What does he have currently and what can be done to improve that brand?
I think if I pick it up, I mean, and of course we're talking from the outside, because when you talk about personal branding, it's like the word itself says, it's personal. And you need to go deep to understand what What's authentic about this
There's got to be
guy?
some level of authenticity.
What's authentic about
what are
David
your
Rudisha?
values and traits?
Exactly.
And then how do you bring them out?
And you bring them out, bring out those that will differentiate you, of course. Because if they're the same as anybody else's, you will not stand out.
I would bring it back down simply to what I call the ABCs, his appearance. And when I talk about appearance, I'm talking about that whole thing about the external appearance in terms of image. So even from the way he carries his body language, he's a wonderful, handsome man with a wonderful smile. Use that to your advantage in terms of attracting some of these photos. The B is the behavior. Now, how he carries himself off the pitch in terms of the things he does.
Very critical.
You know, and how he behaves and how he thinks, and even how he engages in terms of social media and things like that. And then C is the communication skills. These brands are looking for a personal brand that can communicate well, to be a pitchman literally for their products. So I would start with look at those ABCs and work on those.
And if I may use C's instead.
Okay.
Let's talk of 3 C's. He needs to be very clear about what his big picture is. Once he's clear about it, that's the first C. He needs to be very consistent in bringing that out. I mean, we talked about them, media wanting to come to talk to them. He has to have a message he's passing out, he's sending out all the time. If you look at someone like, we'd use Bolt, there's something he's consistently saying.
I am the best.
Yes,
all the time. Media is a little predictable.
Yes.
You almost know what story you're going for.
Yeah.
So you already know that story and it's consistently carried through. The other thing, which maybe that's where Rudisha fails quite a bit, is being constantly available. If you're not in people's faces, if you look at brands, corporate brands, product brands, they make sure, even the biggest brands, which you'd think it's obviously, everybody knows this brand.
That's true.
They make sure they're
Tom, I'm
always
going to have
in
to
your
interrupt
face.
you there.
Yeah.
Closing remarks, gentlemen?
Our athletes need to be acutely aware of their personal brand. This is something that they need to work on. In addition to training for success on the track, they need to train in terms of building their personal brands. To me, the millions of shillings that they're making should really be translated into millions of dollars.
Thank you for that. Tom?
Our athletes have no choice but to build their personal brands. The fact that they get the opportunity to represent us, the fact that they get the opportunity to be raised on a pedestal, and everybody's looking out for them, asking, you saw in the clip, asking, we want to see this guy. What next? They want to relate. They actually owe the public a debt of them building their personal brands. They really have no choice. So I trust that with time, they'll be able to say, fine, actually, this is my responsibility. This country is hungry for role models. I will be that role model. I'm looking forward to that day.
Guys, thank you very much for joining me in the studio to discuss athlete branding. It's been a great show, great insights. Thank you again.
I think this has been a fascinating conversation, and I hope you'll invite us again.
Absolutely.
Continue it.
Okay. Thanks for the opportunity. I
Great.
look forward to
Thank you very
another
much.
such session.
And thank you for watching. We'd love to hear from you on Twitter and email. If you want to see more, you can view an extended version of this show on YouTube. Do join us next week, same time on Setting the Pace.